I have the 7 files here that each correspond to all of the steps in my operative design. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to After Effects now and start a new project, and we'll do a new composition here. Create a new composition. Just click that. I do want 1920 by 1080 pixels, 30 frames per second frame rate. And I will go ahead and I can change this later, but I'm going to keep a white background because that's what my diagram has so far. So I'm going to say OK. So here is After Effects. This is the composition window, and I'm going to say here I'm going to fit up to 100%, so it fits the whole aspect ratio of 1920 by 1080 within this window here. Down at the bottom here, this is the timeline, and the timeline over here, and the layers will show up here on the left side. Let me move this perhaps up there. And on the left side here is the project panel. And right now in the project, any assets, any things that I add to the project are going to show up here. Right now, the only thing in the project is this composition. And you can see also here, comp 1, right, down in the layers. This is the layers and the timeline for this composition number 1. Now what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to start bringing in each one of those files. And so I'll go here to import file. And then when the dialog here opens up, I'm going to open up number 1 here, my step number 1 file. And I'm going to be, this is important here, import as composition retain layer sizes. Okay. And I'm going to say create composition and open that. So what it has done here in the project palette, it's created a new composition from that file. And also here are all of the layers and all of the objects in that file individually. What I can do is I can double click on the composition, and here it opens up the whole composition. Now I can't see really anything because it's black on black, so what I'm going to do is go up here to composition settings, and change the background color here again to, we'll change it to white. Right? Okay, and there, now we can see. And so we see here in the timeline, in the layers, that all of those layers here have come in. And I can, for example, with this icon right here, the little dot, I can solo, which means I can make only one thing show up, right? Or I can sort of like drag across these to turn things, multiple things on and off, or, just like in Photoshop or Illustrator, just select whatever I want to have visible on and off. So it's brought in all these items from Illustrator. Now I'm just going to use the same procedure and bring in steps 2 and 3 of my Illustrator files. Go to File. And something you might notice that you have to be careful of is make sure you select the file here first before you change this, because for some reason, it's maybe a little quirk, is if you change this to what you want, but then, oh no, I have the wrong file selected, and you go here, it resets the settings, the options that for importing. So make sure you select it here in the file list first, and then change the options here to composition retain layer sizes. So we'll bring that one in, and then also import file step 3 as composition retain layer sizes. So I'm going to just grab these 3 compositions and I'm going to drag them to the timeline. And you see what happens is it just inserts them all on the timeline Make sure they're all selected here, move them to the beginning. Here's the playhead, and they're each 5 seconds long right now. 30 seconds is the total animation length. You can zoom in and out in the timeline here and scroll left and right. Zoom out, back out a little bit here. And so they're all right on top of each other, right? So something I can do is I can stagger these. I'm going to reorder them. So I'm going to put step 2 on top and step 3 on top there. So they're sort of in reverse order. 1 is at the bottom, 3 is at the top. I'll take steps 2 and 3, and maybe what I'll do is I'll go to 4 seconds here, and I'll move these two there. Now when I move things on the timeline, I can put them anywhere, but if I hold down Shift, it'll snap to anything else on the timeline that's close. So I'll put the playhead at 4, and I'll move those to 4. Now I'll move this one to 8. And what I can also do is I can click on this time marker here and change it manually here. And if I wanted to move the, say, the time marker to 6 seconds here, I can enter 600, enter. You see that time marker moved to 6 seconds here instead, but actually what I want to do is put it at 8. So I'm going to click there and 800, enter, and I'll move my step number 3 there. So now what happens is that I've got them staggered. Step number 1 starts, does something, and it kind of overlaps for a second here between seconds 4 and seconds 5. And then with step 2 and then step 3. But there's also something I also want to do in this overall timeline, which is animate this text sort of outside of the animation of the operation. So I'm going to go into each one of these and cut and paste the text out from this timeline here. I double click into it. This is just step number 1 now. And here are those 2 layers. I'm going to cut, just Control X or Command X. Now go back to my overall timeline, Comp 1. I'm going to put my playhead back at 0. I'm holding down Shift again so I can snap there. And I'm going to hit paste. All right. And so you see here, it has just pasted in those layers here, text and numeral. Maybe all 3 of these things. I want to have transparency fade in, so I'm going to select those 3 things, these 3 layers. Hit T to open up my opacity transform. Click to set a keyframes activation on all 3 layers that I've selected. And I'm going to set my opacity down to 0. So they're going to start at 0, and then let's say in half a second, 15 frames right here. So 15 frames. Maybe now I want the numeral to be full transparency. So I'll hit keyframe there, set that full transparency. Maybe what I actually want to do is I want to stagger these, so I'll smooth this up here, and at 1 second, that's when I'll give the text itself full opacity. So right now, the animation overall is numeral fades in for half a second, and the text fades in for half a second. I'm going to take all of my diagrams here, these 3. I'm going to hold down the Command key on Mac or Control on Windows to be able to select things that are separated in the timeline here, separate layers. And I'm going to move this, hold down Shift, and snap there. So the number fades in first, becomes completely opaque. Then the text fades in, becomes completely opaque, and now we'll do something and fade in this actual animation. Maybe we'll also do half a second, so 15 frames, to do the same thing. So now we'll set a keyframe there and have that fade in. So let's clean things up a little bit. What I've done here already is I've aligned the end of the text and diagram to the same point in time so that they end at the same time before the next step takes over. We'll do that with the others too. So hold down Shift and snap to that right there. And to stretch things, I can just grab the end and snap it there. Or another way I can do this is I can move my playhead, select the layers, and hit Option right square bracket to move the right edge. Option left square bracket will move the left edge to where the playhead is. So now let's move on to the next part of the tutorial where we'll animate between the transformation that happens between step 1 of our diagram and step 2.